Bogota, Colombia. For decades, the megalopolis has been fighting against cultural decline, against the ever-widening gap between rich and poor. 27% of the city's 8 million inhabitants live below the poverty line. The biggest fight, the fight against drugs. No country is better known for narcotics than Colombia, but a change is underway here too. Colombia is transforming from a country of drug producers into a country of drug users. The cost of drugs is steadily declining, and the rate of addiction is rising, and with it, criminal activity, as that's the only way most people can get money for their next high. A vicious circle, which, with great likelihood, ends here, in one of the toughest prisons in Colombia, Cárcel Distrital. A daily struggle for survival takes place behind these walls, a struggle with guards and other inmates, and with oneself. "1,000 prisoners are serving sentences here or awaiting a verdict. Most of them sex offenders, dealers, or thieves. They are in control here.
I'm in charge of the yard.
Brutal altercations are a part of everyday prison life.
There are occasional stabbings in the cells.
And they leave their mark.
I was cut with a knife. My shirt was all bloody and someone threw it away.
Common causes of problems, drugs, and money. Most of the inmates can't get by without drugs, and the guards can do hardly anything about it.
No one pays for anything here.
The inmates play by different rules.
If you don't want to pay, we won't do anything anymore. It'll stay dirty here.
The most difficult struggle is the struggle with oneself.
If we don't get him fixed, I know he'll try to commit suicide again.
A struggle that many people lose. "5 in the morning. The streets outside are quiet. It's different behind the walls of this penitentiary. The guards have a lot to do today. They have to process 50 new prisoners. They've been transferred here from an overcrowded jail. One of them, 22-year-old Diego de Jesus. This is his second time in prison, serving a 5-year sentence. He doesn't plan to come back again.
I have to think positive. I want to get out of here. It's full of difficult situations that you've got to deal with. It's also hard because you're separated from your family.
Diego first went to prison at the age of 15. He served 3 years for theft. His crime this time? Theft and illegal possession of a firearm. He's already spent 17 months in other prisons. His transfer was a surprise.
I had to pack quickly, so I wasn't able to pack all my things.
Each prison has its own rules. What was allowed in his last prison is not necessarily allowed here in the penitentiary. That's why many new arrivals have things with them that they're not allowed to keep.
That's prohibited.
I forgot.
SIM cards, however, are prohibited in all prisons. The new arrivals are extremely creative in their attempts to smuggle things into the prison. Things that make their lives in jail easier or safer.
We've found scissors like these hidden quite well inside clothing. Prisoners can use them to hurt others or themselves, or even the prison staff.
That's how problems are dealt with here in jail. So it's important to search the new arrivals as carefully as possible. Despite the jail's strict rules, the prisoners are allowed to bring small personal items with them that have no material value.
This is from my wife and son. My son died. He's dead.
It's not the first painful loss he's had to bear. Diego lost his parents when he was still a child. He was raised by his grandparents. He got to know the brutal side of life early on, like many inmates here. Fertile soil for a broken path towards a life of crime. The 50 new arrivals have to be processed. It will take about 12 hours. But not all of them will stay here. If the upcoming examinations reveal that an inmate is ill, either physically or mentally, he gets sent back to the other jail. At the same time, the lights go on in one of the men's cell blocks. Every day, the nearly 1,000 inmates get up at 5 a.m. and are locked back in at 5 p.m. In those 12 hours, they are only allowed to be in the yard. And there, he's in charge. 23-year-old Nicolas Garcia.
Water! God be with you. Thank you.
Nicolas has been serving a sentence here for robbery for 1.5 years now. It's his second time in prison. He knows how he has to behave behind bars in order to survive.
I'm in charge of the yard. There's lots of unrest and no order. I've seen lots of fights, and I've won a couple too.
As the boss on this cell block, Nicolas has many duties.
This pavilion has thieves and also some sex offenders. I have to intercede to make sure they don't go after one another.
Leaders and gangs are prohibited here, but factions nevertheless manage to emerge and take control. They take care of a few things and maintain order, but they also shake down their fellow inmates when something doesn't suit them. This, in turn, alarms the guards. In total, the prison has 150 guards, 18 junior officers, and 3 lieutenants. They make sure the inmates feel the necessary harshness and discipline. Still, there are daily altercations. The reason? Boredom or power struggles. That's why all the guards always carry batons and handcuffs.
Sometimes there are knife fights in the cells in the morning.
What do you want me to do? What do you want? We're going.
The potential for conflict in the jail is very high. Many hardened criminals are confined in a small space. The nearly 1,000 inmates are divided into 6 cell blocks, 1 woman's cell block and 5 men's cell blocks. Nicolas is sitting in the yard for those prisoners who've already been sentenced. The other 4 are for male inmates awaiting a final sentence. The back part of the prison contains the kitchen, the section for solitary confinement, and the workshops, in which certain inmates work for 4 hours during the day. The smaller building is for the prison's administrators. This is also where the visitors check in and new prisoners are processed. Diego, the new inmate, must wait for 1 hour before his processing continues, penned up with 25 other newbies. This is the third prison he's been in, and each one is different in its own way. In the last prison, the inmates didn't have to wear standard prison clothing, but here they do.
You've got to start over. That's normal. Like when you start a new job, you've got to learn everything over again. Where you can stand, what you can do, how things work.
The prisoners are allowed to have one change of clothing in their cells. They wear it on wash day. Otherwise, they are always required to wear the orange prison uniform. No prisoner should be distinguishable from the others. Individuality is not tolerated here.
You can bring toiletries with you. You have to wear a light undershirt. You can take a few things out of the bag to take with you. Toiletries, foot powder, deodorant, toothpaste, razors. Please take all these things out now.
The inmates aren't allowed to take anything else, nor could they. 4 prisoners have to share a 6 by 10 foot cell. Each cell has a toilet and a sink. The beds, 4 concrete slabs with mattresses. Each prisoner has his own small shelf for personal items. They're never even supposed to have the opportunity to feel comfortable. Now it's time for the next step in Diego's processing. The guards have to take fingerprints from every prisoner. It's not enough for the files to simply be transferred from the other prison, for the fingerprints could have changed, for example, due to scars. But the guards take fingerprints not only from those who are new to the prison, but also from inmates who leave the prison. Like John Fernando Gonzalez Diaz, who's being taken to the hospital for an examination. But there's a problem.
You have to wear the orange shirt neatly and be shaved. You haven't shaved. You can't go to the examination without being decently shaved.
I was cut with a knife. My shirt was all bloody and someone threw it away.
John Fernando has been here for 3 years. He shot someone during a robbery.
This is jail.
A couple days ago, he got into a fight with another inmate. John Fernando seriously wounded him. For many prisoners, violence is the only way to survive here.
All the prisons here in Colombia, they are tough, for sure. If you don't see what you're doing, even they can kill you, you know? Probably you can't get out of here, you know? That's why you have to always be looking out. While you're walking, who you're looking, who you're talking to, you know? All the time, you gotta be looking out all the time.
This is already John Fernando's 4th time in jail. His body bears the marks of the years he's served, in the form of scars and tattoos.
This one I make it in Mexico. It means God bless me, never happens again. This one, it means I fight with 2 guys in Mexico too, in jail. One of them is dead. The other one, I take out eye, that's right. And the Colombian flowers is come out from the Mexican skull, you know? And my stars, 3 times in jail, 3 times be out.
John Fernando is a notorious thief, and he has no compunction about using weapons. That's how he earns his living, and he hopes to make a lot of money. Many of the inmates never learned any other way to make a living. It's the easiest way, albeit a hard one, that usually leads directly to prison. John Fernando is leaving the prison walls for the first time in 3 years. Naturally, he is heavily guarded, as is the case with every prisoner transport. There is a great danger of escape, and a risk that accomplices outside the jail will try to free the prisoners. Whereas the guards usually only carry batons, here they protect themselves with bulletproof vests and a gun. So far, all attempts to escape or to free prisoners have been thwarted. Such transports take place every day. Inmates often pretend to be sick in order to get out, and then smuggle things back in. Colombia is a country in which bribery is normal. This is how many prisoners obtain contraband from the hospital, which they then smuggle into the prison. And to prevent this, the inspections are very thorough. Even though it's a prison, there are still drugs here. Many of the inmates are addicted or take drugs to make their everyday lives more bearable. Since the guards don't always find everything, drug-sniffing dogs are used. Diego, the new inmate, knows that the first hours in prison are decisive.
You can't cause problems. If you do, then you have even more problems. You have to behave really well in order to get released early. And when I get out, I want to help my grandmother.
New inmate processing also includes a medical exam. Anyone found to be sick is not allowed to have contact with the other inmates. The risk of infection is too great. At 5:45, the guards close the cells for 12 hours. From now on, the prisoners must stay in the yards of their respective cell blocks. There is no opportunity to spend time alone, find peace or quiet, or enjoy privacy. As he does every morning, Niklas, the boss, marks his territory. 14 people belong to his gang. Each has his own jobs, handed out by the boss, of course.
Buddy, help with the cleaning. Get out of the way so they can clean. Clear the court.
The prison has rules and routines, but the prisoners expand on them in their own way.
Some people clean in exchange for a sentence reduction. But since they can't keep everything clean themselves, 2 or 3 people help out. On Sunday, they get paid for it. We demand 35 cents or cigarettes. We don't keep the money, but pass it on to the men who do the cleaning.
Money is prohibited in the prison. Payment is made in cigarettes or telephone PIN numbers. They're worth a lot here, as they enable contact to the outside world. In order to use the phone, inmates have to have a PIN number which gives them credit. The telephone cards themselves are provided by family or friends on the outside. The more rules there are, the more people break them. Niklas sees himself as an intermediary between prisoners, but also between inmates and guards.
I have to stop the fights that break out here. If fights take place, I lose my status. I am the people. I'm the one in charge.
Most of the inmates accept Niklas. He must fight regularly to prove that he belongs at the top of his cell block. The guards tolerate Niklas as boss as long as he works in their interests. If he doesn't, his will be the first head to roll. The inmates know that too.
There's always one person there in case things get chaotic. But this person must have character, be strong. Otherwise, many people will try to bring him down and take his place. Like a president is in charge of his government, there also has to be someone here who's in charge of the yard.
Officially, the guards are in charge of the yard. But there's a big problem. The guards can be bribed, but they try to avoid conflicts with the inmates. The guards know that there are drugs here, and that many inmates use them. From morning to night, the inmates smoke marijuana, take cocaine, or get high on bazuco, a cheap byproduct of cocaine production. It all goes on right under the guards' noses. But they put up with it, since they can't stop it completely anyway.
There are many ways for forbidden substances to find their way into the prison. They can be brought in by visitors on visiting day, or they can be thrown into the pavilions from outside. There are many ways to get contraband inside.
Throwing things over the prison walls is one of the most popular and effective ways of smuggling contraband into the jail. Quick as lightning, one of the inmates grabs the package that's been thrown in. A lot of thought goes into the concealment of smuggled goods. Drugs, weapons, and cell phones are wrapped up in many small pieces of paper. Everything is quickly distributed and hidden until the guards have nothing left to find except the letters that are also in the packages. And the prisoners explain them in their own way.
They were letters. A family member decides to write and sends them.
One example, I was arrested with an accomplice. He's in the other yard, so he sends me a letter to tell me we have a hearing on a certain day. The letters are about that kind of thing.
The penitentiary's location makes it an easy target for this kind of smuggling. The cell blocks are surrounded on one or two sides by public streets, and the yards have no roofs. Not all the packages make it to the yards. They land on the roofs and then on this table. The lieutenant is taking pictures of the contents of 15 packages that were all thrown in 1 week, but that didn't hit their target.
We have a couple of greenish substances here. Looks like marijuana. And the stuff here comes wrapped in individual portions. It's another way to smuggle drugs, swallowing them or hiding them in body cavities. That's why the guards often can't find drugs. But the dogs can.
Only a fraction of the packages remains on the roof. Most make their way into the yard, but that doesn't always mean trouble.
According to Colombian law, possessing, selling, and transporting drugs is illegal. If we find someone with more than 20 grams, that is more than 20 grams of marijuana, or 1 gram of bazuco, if we find someone with more than this dose, then we prosecute him.
Even in prison, this law applies. Prosecution means a longer prison sentence.